Massacre Girl versus Aurelia the Warleader, Nekusar the Mindrazer, and Cromat. Not going to keep a one-lander. Get a free mulligan in multiplayer, so we can definitely go for that. Nice 3 lands, an aristocrat, and some card draw with Signing Blood, so I think we can definitely keep that one. We'll just get down a swamp. We've got lands for the next 4 turns, so that's good. Not going to get down the Carrion Feeder straight away. Don't really need it in the early game. It's in here because it goes well with the aristocrat theme of the deck. And if we get a lot of tokens into play, then the Blood Artist will very much like to see the Carrion Feeder sacrificing creatures. For the Cromat opponent, it is a turn 1 Sol Ring into a Sensei's top, and they have spun the top to have a look at the top 3 cards of the library. Cromat is a 5-mana Wooburg commander, a 5/5. For Orzhov, destroy target creature blocking or blocked by Cromat. Is Cromat gains flying until the end of the turn. Golgari regenerates it. Boros is +1/+1 until the end of the turn. And Simic puts it on top of its owner's library. Just a tap land from Nekusar, and a tap land from Aurelia. Nekusar the Mindrazer is a 5-mana Grixis commander, a 2/4. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card. When an opponent draws a card, Nekusar deals 1 damage to that player. We get into another land, so we're not going to be struggling for mana this game, I think. Yeah, we're going to have to discard a card here. Are we going to make use of Wasteland? Perhaps should have gone for the Carrion Feeder on turn 1. We're just going to have to ditch the Wasteland here, unfortunately. Aurelia the Warleader is a 6-mana Boros commander, a 3/4 flyer with Vigilance and Haste. When it attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. And then our commander is new from War of the Spark, Massacre Girl. Is 5 mana for a 4/4 with Menace. When it enters the battlefield, each other creature gets -1/-1 until the end of the turn. And whenever a creature dies this turn, each creature other than Massacre Girl gets -1/-1. And while I'm talking about all this, Cromat is going off. They went for an Enlightened Tutor into a Thran Dynamo and then got a Wheel of Fortune off, so we have ditched our hand, so I don't feel too bad about having to discard that Wasteland previously. We've got our Skull Clamp, so if we can get into Bloodghast, that would be really good. Alright, how's about a Sol Ring into a Genesis Chamber and a Skull Clamp? Or do we just want to go for the Zulaport Cutthroat? We'll go for that and get ourselves a Mir, and then we can kill that with the Skull Clamp next turn. Not too worried about ditching the Blood Artist and other aristocrats into the graveyard because we do have mass reanimation in this deck. And it looks like Cromat is just planning on ramping into whatever it is that they're ramping into. It could be anything. This could just be a generic Wooburg commander that doesn't actually care about its general in the command zone. It's Super Friends. That explains it. Search your library for a Planeswalker, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your library. Oh, and it's my favourite they've searched for, Teferi Temporal Archmage. That goes particularly well with a Grim Monolith. So Teferi can come down for just 6 mana next turn and effectively pays for itself if it untaps these 3 mana rocks. There's a Maegrim from Nekusar, a typical card from Nekusar. It's a good job Cromat wheeled before the Maegrim came out. And a Chromatic Lantern for Aurelia, so they are not going to struggle getting their double white and double red. Alright, we get into another land to play. I'd rather stay off Urborg as long as possible. And surely Cromat hasn't quit out on us. Alright, that's unfortunate. So it looks like we are onto a 3-player game. Let's just peck both of our opponents. 1 there and 1 there. And then we'll get down the Skull Clamp. I think we're going to go for Pawn of Ulamog, but we'll see what we draw into by killing this Mir first. And we do, of course, ping each opponent for 1 apiece, thanks to the Zulaport Cutthroat. Ophiomancer goes very nicely with a Skull Clamp. So I'm going to get that down instead. And then we'll kill off the Mir token to do some more shenanigans with Skull Clamp. And that's very nice. We get into another land. We've got Necropotence for more card draw. Yeah, I'm happy to pass like that. The reason Ophiolmancer's so good with sack outlets and Skull Clamp is the snake comes down at the beginning of each upkeep. So we can Skull Clamp it on our turn, and then when it goes over to the next player, we'll get the snake come back out again. Really good with things like Viscera Seer and Carrion Feeder as well. Viscera Seer will allow you to dig deeper into your library by scrying cards to the bottom. And there's a Mana Barbs. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, it deals 1 damage to that player. Not seeing any draw hate so far from Nekusar. We do have a couple of means of removing enchantments in this deck, but not too many. We are a mono black player, so we're going to rely on the white player over there to get rid of that Mana Barbs. And a Gilded Lotus for Aurelia. And a Hammer of Perforos, so we definitely have haste to worry about now. I'm going to show my opponent that we're aiming for Nekusar thanks to that Mana Barbs. Let's go in for a Grave Betrayal maybe. Well, let's swing in first. And we'll just poke our opponent for 4. Now then, do we want the Grave Betrayal now, or can we wait? Let's Skull Clamp the snake. Okay, there's a Dictate of Erebos and a Sifter of Skulls. Yeah, I think I want to go for the Sifter of Skulls just because it's more expensive. And then we'll get a Genesis Chamber. Do we want to kill the mirror off yet? I think we'll just leave it at that for now. And as we can see, Ophiolmancer triggers on our opponent's turn. So we get that snake back immediately. No reason not to Skull Clamp on our turn now. A Scry land for Nekusar. Curious that they're not getting anything down. They might be holding up counter magic. They have 3 blue mana open. Maybe a Cryptic Command. And there's a SRAM, Senior Edificer, so clearly this is some kind of artifact Voltron style deck maybe. Definitely want to go in for equipment if you have a SRAM. And then an Argentum Armor will draw them a card. That will cost them 6 to equip. So hopefully that can go after the Mana Barbs. I have to assume that they want rid of that just as much as we do. Okay, Viscera Seer is a sack outlet, which is good with the snake. I don't mind going for the Urborg now because Nekusar has 3 black sources, so they're not struggling. And the Chromatic Lantern can get Aurelia any colour they like. Let's go in at Nekusar again, just to show the Boros player that we don't mean them any harm just yet. And they took a while to let that through there, so I don't know if they were deciding if they wanted to do something about our attacks there. I'm just going to go for this Grave Betrayal, I think. And if they have counter magic, it at least gets it out of their hand, but it's allowed down. Let's go for the Clamp onto the snake again. We'll at least gain a life back when we do this. And we get into another land for next turn, that's good. Let's just pass like that. Now, are we going to regret getting rid of that Necropotence? I'm missing the Reliquary Tower that we drew into previously. Another Aristocrat effect would be nice. I think the Pawn of Ulamog can go. And because we had to discard, Megrim will deal 2 damage to us. And with Grave Betrayal on the battlefield, whenever a creature we don't control dies, it comes back into play under our control at the end step as a black zombie and with a plus counter on it, which is really good if your commander wipes the board. Currently, we'd only net ourselves a SRAM. And here comes Nekusar. Seems as though that Mana Barbs is dealing just as much damage to Nekusar as it is to us. Luckily, we have a nice bit of life gain in the deck. I think it might be time to find out where this Argentum Armor is headed. The Grave Betrayal is one of those cards that people are terrified of, and they don't actually assess the board before they blow it up. As it stands now, we won't actually get anything from the Grave Betrayal other than SRAM. And we have next to no use for a SRAM, I think. Yeah, the only 3 equipment, Blade of the Blood Chief, Skull Clamp and Lightning Greaves. So they shouldn't be all that worried about us acquiring a SRAM. But they just go for the Loxodon Warhammer anyway. They do have 6 floating, so they can equip a creature up with that, but they just decide to go for the Loxodon Warhammer. I'm not too sure about that. And then they're going in at us. Well, yeah, we do have a Death Toucher up. This is just a good way for us to get ourselves a SRAM. So let's just block like that. We'll get that snake back at the beginning of our turn anyway. And then we'll drain both of our opponents. We get 1 life from that. And Grave Betrayal will give us a SRAM. That will come down as a free 3/3. I'm quite sure what our opponent's aim was with that. And there's a Rise of the Dark Realms. That's really nice. Okay, I definitely think we're not going to need Necropotence this game. A Black Market seems nice though. So let's go for a Black Market. Whenever a creature dies, we put a charge counter on this, and at the beginning of our main phase, we get black for each charge counter on it. Then to gain a bit more life, I think we go in for the Falconwrath Noble as well. Unfortunately, can't equip the Skull Clamp, but something tells me we're going to be drawing lots of cards anyway, thanks to Nekusar. Let's go in at Nekusar with the Sifter of Skulls. And then both the Mirs can go in at the Boros player as well as the Ophiomancer. And the SRAM can go in at the Boros player as well. Okay, they're just chump blocking with the Mir. They're not giving up their Nekusar as was to be expected, really. And the Boros player is chumping the SRAM and just taking 4 damage from the Mirs and the Ophiomancer. So deciding not to get some Mirs off of us. Grave Betrayal will trigger, but it will not give us those tokens back. The tokens evaporate as soon as they hit the graveyard. And then, because some creatures died, we'll get some charge counters onto that Black Market, which will be free mana next turn. And then a couple of creatures died, so we get a couple of Falconwrath Noble triggers. Now then, let's see if the Nekusar player can really hurt us with a wheel or 2. Okay, I don't know what happened there. They just tapped 4 lands, took the damage from Mana Barbs, and then went into their beginning of combat phase. I have to imagine that's an accident. Okay, and are we going to see a Shame Scoop here? Okay, and they didn't even decide to concede. They just Shame Scooped and quit out of the client. Alright, we've just ejected that player. That is a shame that we've had one player scoop really early and then another one Shame Scoop because they hit the wrong button. I like to think that most players would just play it out, but I'm not sure how accurate that is. Seems as though one little thing goes wrong for somebody, and instead of just playing on, they seem to want to ruin the fun for everybody. Down comes Aurelia, and they still have 4 mana open, so they can go for the Loxodon Warhammer and get a lot of damage going with that. We're going to have to make use of Dictate of Erebos and Viscera Seer, I think. But we're going to be on 12 commander damage here. Okay, there wasn't an additional combat phase there. Unless they just decided to pass through it. Is Aurelia the Warleader bugged? Whenever it attacks for the first time each turn, there's an additional combat phase. Yeah, they only attacked into us once. Okay. Well, our opponent hasn't said anything about it. We get 2 free mana, so we'll go for... yeah, we'll go for the Dictate of Erebos, and then it's a Skull Clamp onto the snake, and our opponent scoops to that. Clearly they don't feel as though they can get around a Dictate of Erebos. We haven't shown them that we have an instant speed sack outlet, although we do. Yeah, that's a real shame. People just quitting really easily there. Yeah, that's a real shame. It showed us some of what we can do with the deck, so I might upload this anyway, I'm not too sure. We'll have to just carry on playing tonight and see how many games we get out of Massacre Girl.